When you're growing out bonsai, often you'll realize that the top grows a lot stronger than the bottom branches. Now, how can you tackle that? That is what I did with this yew over the last year. Earlier in this year, I thought that this yew was too tall and not wide enough. So I pulled some of the young branches down, fanned them out, and now I need to push them to grow stronger than the top. But you're going to have to wait. The candles need to extend a little bit further. Now it is early May, well actually the middle of May already, and it's now quite clear to see that here these lower branches that I'm trying to develop since last year are much weaker than this top part, which I've had in place for a long time. It is still early in the year for this yew. The growth is still very young and green, and this is exactly the moment when I do this technique. And the reason why I do it now is the plant has spent a lot of effort in creating these branches, and these branches have not given back so much to the tree yet. So what I'm going to do is here in this top area of the tree, everything above, say, this level, all these branches are weak and I'm going to just let them extend for the year. And in July or so, when the main growing is done, then I'm going to prune these back. What you'll then get is that in the lower branches, you get a lot of extra back budding. The upper branches I'm now already pruning back. And how far am I pruning them back? Well, I'm only going to leave maybe 4 or 5 needles of current year's growth in place. So something like this I'm taking off and I'm leaving a very, very little bit in place. And next to that, I'm going to remove all the old needles except for maybe 6 needles that are on this branch. As a result, the top of this tree is going to be very, very bare. It will start back budding and these buds might open this year, but it will be weeks behind on this growth. Meanwhile, the lower branches continue on growing, continue getting stronger. Then in June, July, when the growth has hardened off, I prune that off and then I hope for more back budding on the inside. Now this pruning I can do with scissors, or if I've timed this right, I can also do the following. I just grab the young growth, tilt it a little bit and then pull, and a few needles will remain in place. This means these little sprouts have not hardened off enough so that I pull off the whole sprout. This of course is a lot quicker than with scissors, and in fact, because I pull off the needles that I'm holding in my finger, I might actually have less damage on the remaining needles. Then again, the moment I start removing the old needles from this branch, I will probably still damage these sprouts. Now this I need to do throughout the tree. I'm not going to expect you to watch. So this pad is now pretty much plucked and now I can start thinning it out and taking off all these old needles. And that's going to be quite a lot of work. Keep in mind, everything on the yew is toxic. So wash your hands after you do this. Don't eat or drink anything while you do this. And in my case, I sometimes get a little dizzy after working the yew for a couple of hours. So I keep that in mind, and whenever I feel a little bit dizzy, I just stop working on it and take a break. So this one pad is done. I'm not sure if you can really tell how much has gone. Of course, I don't do this every single year, right? I'm now removing 3rd and 4th year worth of needles. Some of the 2nd year's worth of needles. Normally I just let this grow, and once it starts to get the deeper green color, I just prune it back to the last 5 or 6 needles and leave it at that. Now, no matter how much attention you pay, the work that we do here results in lots of needles and cut off tips to fall in your pot. That's of course not pretty, but it also causes the spread of infectious diseases that might be in old needles. So it's always good to make sure that you clean up your pot afterwards. Now, if you don't like cleaning up a pot, I don't, here's a little trick which probably most of you will know already. Just take an old cloth and put it on the soil around the trunk of your tree. It is very obvious, but I know that not everybody realizes that this is an ideal way to just clean up without spending a lot of time on it. Now whatever falls on it, it's just gently pulling it away and your pot is clean again. Now this front part of the tree has been tip pruned. I've thinned out all these branches and they're a lot barer, even though from the frontal view you probably wouldn't notice it. Now if I look at these branches, indeed I think I should start wiring these tips out. The reason is because these little pads, they were quite horizontal and spread out, just like the ones that I'm building here, but the ends, they've grown up. It hasn't been wired for a couple of years, so yeah, I think I'm going to put some light copper wire on it, but maybe I will wait a little bit until this has extended, then I'll prune back, unwire and rewire the whole tree. Now a few weeks have passed and it is time to start wiring these out. And as I said before, I'm only going to wire a few of these branches. And I'm just going to wire the bottom branches. It is a little bit difficult because there's a lot of small branches. But basically this is what I'm aiming to do. Wire these lowest branches off each little pad. And then just try to push them down so that basically the profile of the pad at the bottom changes. I don't want these to be very vertical. I really want them to be growing more in a horizontal fashion. And then move this branch just a tiny little bit down. This way the profile changes slightly. And if I do this for all these branches on here, then the pads will all look a little bit more downward, and then over time these can grow back up out. So really it is only about the lowest branches that I'm going to put in place, and with backbudding and pruning here on the top I'm going to fill out the rest of the profile. This is the initial result. Now I'm going to wait another 4 weeks or so, then we are in the middle of July. At that time I'm going to prune these back. I'm going to take off the aluminium wire that's on here, wire it out with copper as well, and then hopefully the profile of the tree is done, and these back buds that are starting to form here now on these branches can start growing out and form pads, and then also here these upper pads can fill up again. I think about half of the foliage has been removed in the last couple of weeks. Should be no problem. I'm going to just add a little bit more fertilizer, be careful with my watering and make sure it gets plenty of light, but no midday sun for now. I'm going to wait for another 2 or 3 weeks. Let it get used to this thinning. It is July, and a quick look before the sun really turns away from this working area, and you can see here at the top lots and lots of buds are opening up all the way on the inside as well. So that part was successful, and here at the bottom it still looks like these bottom branches have a lot more foliage than the top. So that means that these branches are indeed relatively stronger at this point than in the top. But that is going to change in a second. Last year I pulled these branches down, so now I can remove all this wire, and then I'm going to rewire. I'm also going to pluck the old needles away so that here further at the end of the pads I also get backbudding. But if you look here on the inside, all these backbuds on these pads, they have done brilliantly. Now I don't really like unwiring by hand like this, but if you use a wire clipper there is still the risk that you damage the bark. And next to that, this is a lot faster to work. Now to reduce breaking needles or branches completely, I have wet down the whole tree. This way it gets a little bit more slippery, you know, when it is wet it gets more slippery, and therefore it's easier to get these wires off with minimal damage. Nevertheless, I am expecting quite a few needles to break, and that is not really an issue. I'm going to pull off a lot more later on. In fact, I'm probably going to pull off half of the foliage that's still on there if I look at these two. But let me get the wire off first and then we'll continue. Always make sure you hold the end once you get towards the end, so the wire doesn't start rotating and pushing off all the buds that we've carefully been generating here. Now before I start wiring, I'm first going to go through the tree. What you see here in the back, this is the nice budding that has happened now over the last couple of months. Here you see small buds also starting to appear in places where there's no needles. So I'm going to take a whole bunch of these needles off from the inside. This of course weakens this branch, but it does help in getting new budding. Then I look here at the end and there is, well, 1, 2, 3, 4 branches. I only want to keep
2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to remove 2. Well, which ones do I remove? That's in this case, these 2 are the furthest out. They interfere with that one and that one, so I'm going to remove these 2 and keep the 2 at the end. Now if I compare the length of this branch with the branch here above it, it sticks out quite far. So in this case I can actually gently reduce the length a little bit, but this is not per se needed. I just do it because here the profile will end roughly at this place. And here also just gently remove all the needles. And I'm leaving, well, what is this? Maybe 10, 15 of the old needles. And then I have the end here that was grown this year. Just like that. And this branch is now ready for wiring. That was quite a bit of wiring. Hardly any tension wires left. This can now grow until spring, and then in spring I will look at repotting this. But for now this is pretty happy. I'm happy with this. I hope you're happy with it. The top is still a lot stronger than the bottom, but at least the bottom has filled out more. I do think it can use another 2 inches, 5 centimeters at the bottom branches, and then really has a very nice wide open profile. But a really good start. And will you look at that? But everywhere now on these branches that I've been laying out. Of course, the top is still growing a lot stronger. I'm going to leave it in place for now. And at the beginning of winter, I'm going to cut it back to the first 2 or 3 needles, just like so. And that way, the top again is exactly as strong as the bottom branches. And the bottom branches will very quickly pick up because there's lots of buds coming. Now, doesn't this look lovely in the sun? I guess with that, we've come to the end of this video. This was Jelle, growing bonsai, and see you next time.